Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Matt back here with another video. Today we're talking about the Nikon D3500. It's a little bit of a change up. I usually talk about Fujifilm cameras and lenses and stuff related to Fujifilm, but the Nikon D3300 was actually my first camera ever, which I did sell, but my friend was selling his first camera, which was this Nikon D3500, just a slightly newer version of the D3300. And I know that this is a lot of people's first cameras, between this and the Canon Rebel T7 or whatever they're on now, the Canon Rebel series and the Nikon D30 whatever series. These are a lot of people's first cameras. These are DSLR cameras. So I do want to talk about what it's like to shoot with this camera and what I think of it overall. I only really shot with it with two lenses here, the 35mm f1.8G and the, 70 to 300. 4.5 to 6.3 G. So not a lot of light coming through with that. And the 70 to 300 is like a kit lens. I never use the 18 to 55 kit lens. I used to use it whenever it was like my first camera and I only had the kit lens. But I do have to say that the 35mm 1.8 is a nice lens. I'm not going to review all these separately because I'm actually selling this camera. Because what I really want to talk about in this video, I am going to review this and talk about this camera a little bit and these lenses that I've been shooting with. But I really want to talk about, is it worth it to upgrade from the Nikon D3000 line or the Canon Rebel line to a Fujifilm camera? Because it's also APS-C. And there's this idea for a lot of photographers that you need to, whenever you upgrade from your first camera, that you should always buy a full frame camera, which is a trap, I feel like. And obviously I'm one to talk, like obviously I bought into the Fujifilm system. I make a bunch of videos on Fujifilm, but I use this professionally. And for a lot of people who want to upgrade to full frame, it's just in their head because that's like what you're told is like you want full frame. But I personally do think that Fujifilm APS-C cameras are like noticeably superior from like this Nikon D3000 camera. I can't speak for, I know that the Nikon APSC DSLRs, which are definitely going out of fashion anyway, they have like 3 different tiers, I believe, or at least 2, because there's the Nikon D7000 line, which is also APS-C cameras, but a little bit more professional. This is really like the most base entry-level camera. But yeah, this camera, for a lot of you watching, you might own a camera like this, one of these entry-level DSLRs. And the main thing with this is it's a DSLR, so it shoots differently than the Fujifilm cameras, which are mirrorless. These DSLRs, you have to really rely on the exposure meter, because when you use the viewfinder, it's an optical viewfinder. And because of that, you can't see what exposure you're actually getting in the end, which you can also shoot in. If you flip a switch, you shoot in live view mode, where you look at the back of the back screen, which on this is annoyingly like just flat to the camera, which is another advantage, especially for like an X-T3 Fujifilm camera, is that it has the articulating screen that you can tilt it up, down, and even like sideways and up. So that's one thing I noticed when I was shooting this, is the screen completely flat to the back of the body was annoying to shoot with. And I just prefer to have an electronic viewfinder where I can see my exposure in real time. But some people prefer to shoot with DSLRs, and there's certainly nothing wrong with that. I know especially Nikon full-frame cameras and other full-frame DSLRs, their quality is indistinguishable from full-frame mirrorless cameras. So that's not really the issue, is like, even though DSLRs are basically being left behind in the dust by 99% of camera manufacturers and everyone's going to mirrorless, it doesn't mean that DSLRs are necessarily not as good as cameras as mirrorless cameras, but in terms of simply image quality. But it's more the usability and just small things like that, like I just talked about, seeing your exposure in real time. But yeah, like I said, this isn't going to be like a really technical review. This is really just a conversation that is including this camera. And I'll show some pictures I took with this camera. It is, like I said, it's capable of taking good pictures. Here's a couple of examples. I shot a lot of these like the walk around pictures of just like random objects were taken with the 35 millimeter 1.8 full frame equivalent 50 millimeter field of view. The Fujifilm equivalent would be like the 35 millimeter f1.8 or 1.4, which is an older Fujifilm lens, but I'm using that to shoot this right now. I would say that it's definitely optically superior to this 35 millimeter 1.8 from Nikon, and that's because a lot of these manufacturers that have both APS-C and full frame lines, even back in the DSLR days and now in modern, with like even like the Canon full frame cameras and the APS-C mirrorless cameras, they noticeably like cripple the APS-C camera, because the hope is when they have both of those lines is that you start with an APS-C camera and you eventually buy into the full frame, more expensive version. And with Fujifilm, the difference between them and these other manufacturers that make APS-C cameras is that they don't have a full frame category of cameras. They skip full frame. They have a medium format line of cameras. So Fujifilm has APS-C and medium format. They don't have a full frame camera, and medium format is a completely different shooting style. It's for a completely different market. So they put 100% into their APS-C line of cameras and lenses, and that's why you'll see that if you go from one of these entry-level Nikon or Canon DSLRs and you go to a Fujifilm camera, it will be superior in every way. The lenses will be more optically superior in terms of just like I noticed with this 35 1.8, like it's pretty sharp, but I was having chromatic aberration at like f5.6, f8, and it was like, I don't know, that was just crazy to me. Like I would never see that in a million years past f2 on the 35 millimeter 1.4 Fujifilm. So yeah, I think if you're starting out with one of these entry-level APS-C DSLRs from Nikon or Canon, it is definitely a worthwhile upgrade to get a Fujifilm camera, and it's a lot more cost-effective in most senses than getting a full-frame mirrorless camera. I understand that these newest Fujifilm lenses and stuff that Fujifilm has been putting out, people have been saying like that these are almost reaching full-frame levels of pricing, and that is undeniably true in some cases. But if you are in it to save money and just have a good system overall, I do think Fujifilm is a very solid system. They have every kind of lens you would need. They have a very solid macro lens. They have a very solid, like basically 70 to 200 full frame equivalent, the 50 to 140. That's one of the red badge lenses. They have a great 24 millimeter lens, equivalent lens, the 16 mil 1.4, the 35 1.4, the new 33 1.4 replacing it, and the list goes on and on and on. Fujifilm has just lenses for every kind of photographer, and their APS-C cameras, especially like the XT line, the XH line, that they're going to have the XH2 coming out soon, they don't pull any punches in terms of like this. It's noticeable. Like there's just no shortcuts. It's just not intuitive to use. When I use my XT3s, which are like my camera I use all the time for my professional use and just my personal projects like this YouTube video here, it's just so easy and intuitive to use. I'm at the point now, I've owned it for maybe a year and a half, 2 years. I have two XT3s now, that I don't even like notice that I'm using it. I just do what I want. I know exactly where it is in the menu system. It's just intuitive. So yeah, I don't know. This is just, I guess, a conversation about basically, if you have a camera like this and you started off with a camera like this and you want to upgrade, what should you get? And I say that really just like consider Fujifilm. It might not be right for you. Maybe it is better to get a full frame mirrorless camera. Like maybe it is better for you to get a Sony camera because you absolutely need the fastest autofocus. Maybe you're a sports action photographer or whatever. But there's a use case for Fujifilm cameras for a lot of shooters as well, and I find myself to be one of them. I use it professionally for video, I use it professionally for photo, and people never have said to me, well, this doesn't look like a full frame image or whatever. People are always blown away by the quality of the video and say the pictures are just like, they're astonished about how sharp they are because of the Fujifilm X-Trans sensors. That's a whole nother conversation for why Fujifilm has an advantage over some other camera brands. So I don't know. This was just a cool conversation kind of video, kind of off the cuff. I'll edit it into something cohesive, I hope. I hope it was an enjoyable conversation to listen to. It was almost like a podcast in a way. Leave a like if you enjoyed. Leave a comment down below. Do you own a Nikon 3000 series camera, or have you ever owned one of them, or one of the Canon Rebel cameras? And did you upgrade to Fujifilm? Did you upgrade to a regular full frame camera from like Sony or Canon, or even Nikon has the Z line now, which is very promising. I actually one day really want to try those. Even though I do praise Fujifilm, like I spent the majority of this video kind of praising Fujifilm, my channel has largely been about them so far, despite the one Sigma video. It's not that I am like completely dedicated to like this system and I can't like see the flaws, and I feel like I do reasonably point out flaws on this channel when I don't like stuff, but overall I'm very happy with the Fujifilm system, which is like why I've made so many videos on it and different lenses for it. But yeah, I do think it's worth a shot to go Fujifilm if you're going to upgrade from your first camera. And I went back into another ramble there. I'm done now. Leave a like if you enjoyed. Like I said, check in with me in the comments, and I hope to see you in the next video. I'm going to take this to the post office now and sell off this Nikon camera because no thank you anymore. All right, bye.